believe that was the end of the season, though they weren't very clear on that for the show for My Hero. But what are your general thoughts on the way that the show has progressed? And what are your what are your expectations? Do you think the popularity has grown? We can go into a couple of different things. I guess let's just start. What have been your impressions with the series as it's progressed? Like, have you had a favorite season or a favorite moment on the show? Anything you want to call out, like talk about?
It's like I mean, first off, I really like the show. I think it's really good. And there are like plenty of amazing moments. I think like one of those like moments that like that's really stuck out to me. Like even looking back, one of the moments that was really like that sticks out to me is when Deku and Todoroki fought at the whatever that tournament was.
Right.
I forget how long ago that was. It might have been like what season, like 2 maybe, season 1 or 2.
Yeah, maybe.
But like, yeah, I don't know. For some reason, that fight was just like really, really dope, and like there have been a lot of really good like standout moments throughout the show. But like, I think it's progressed really well. It has like a really consistent story. It has like really standout like protagonists and villains, and it seems like they're like setting it up for it to last like a long time.
Yeah.
Like a traditional shonen. Like, you know, you get those season or arc kind of conflicts that resolve, but then like the overall conflict is still there, hasn't changed too much. So like, even because, for example, it's been a while since I've like actually watched through the show. Like once season I think once season 3 ended and we were waiting for season 4 to come out, I think I watched up to season 3 like in a binge.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was I watched up to season 3, and then as season 3 was coming out, I kept up with it. But once season 4 came out, it took a while for me to catch up.
Right.
So so there was a long stretch of time where I was not watching the show, and I remember watching, because again, I didn't watch that filler arc either at the end of season 4. So there were long gaps of time where I wasn't watching the show. Mm-hmm. And I remember watching those last 2 episodes with the Endeavor fight, and I remember thinking to myself like, oh yeah, Nomus are still a thing, like,
right, yep.
Because they've been around for like ever, it seems. So there's all these different like, you know, characters coming in and out, and there are like the big overarching like League of Villains, and then there are like smaller ones. So it definitely looks like they're going to keep this going for a long time, which, I mean, that's fair. One Piece has like 10 billion episodes, so, you know, they can do what they want at this point. They can go.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So I going along with that. One of you said one of your biggest moments was that fight between the two in the tournament arc. I still think that like, I don't think necessarily anything. I think one of the first times. So when you started, I have to kind of go back to the beginning. By the way, Stormbreaker said the original show had both the first. First they went to the Digiworld, and then he came back to Earth, and they returned back because of the Digiworld. And then he says, I'm not really the biggest fan of My Hero Academia, but I think All Might looks very dope. One Piece is the show with the straw hat. Yeah. You definitely should give My Hero a second chance, and I'll tell you why. So, and it depends on how far you've gotten into it. Maybe you're caught up, and in which case then you have like, you know, to each their own, right? But I think the big thing about My Hero is, and the same thing can be said with like any show. Like when you first start, you don't really know what you're getting into. I think for a lot of anime, even if people tell you, like for the most part though, you don't really know what you're getting into. And for especially like when it's a new show and the first season's out, so everyone's kind of really not sure. Even if you read the manga, you could be like, oh, it's gonna go really cool in this direction. You still don't really know. You don't know what the anime is gonna turn out like. So watching that show, I hadn't been into many anime for a long time. I hadn't found a lot that had been very good or intriguing for a while. And so I watched that show, and one of the biggest moments, and it was almost an aha moment, right? Is I started watching the show, and I'm like, oh, it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. And then you get hit with it was the scene where they had been practicing for a long time, but there was the League of Villains showed up inside of the test facility, the training facility.
Right.
It was like the first invasion of the school.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I was like, this show is legit. I watched it.
They went out of their way to make that scene like really badass.
Yeah, and it came out of nowhere, which to me is like, if you can subvert my expectations in a good storytelling way, I have to be key in a good storytelling way, because there's shows that
of course
try to subvert expectations but aren't actually good at writing. When you can do something like that successfully, you really have my attention, and they pulled it off very, very, very well. And so I was thoroughly. This guy just asked me to leave his house. I was thoroughly enthralled from there, and then they just kept stacking it on and really adding good content. And so I've been continually shocked by the series. So that was a big moment. But the next big one was the fight with One for All and All Might. Or All for One, sorry, and All Might. That episode, or that fight was like, not only is this show legit, but like they are not willing to take risks. And so, and like that's
really?
Didn't you feel that or no?
They aren't willing to take risks.
Or they are willing. I'm sorry. I said that wrong. They are willing to take risks. So like, cuz for me, like I saw that fight and you're like, "Oh, they're going to take this away from him." And then that also happened in a way that I wasn't as happy with in the most recent arc. The arc, the dude that can teleport. I was a little disappointed with what they did to his character.
Yeah.
Even though I do think they'll give him a second shot, but like I think they'll kind of fix that with that girl's powers and stuff. But without getting too spoilery, but anyway, regardless, I think the show's been continuously impressing me, and which for shonens, a lot of shonens do that, but I find for most shonens they have a slower ramp. I don't know if you feel that as well.
They, in a way, they do. They don't always. And what I mean by that is like usually they'll start with like a very like small and insignificant conflict, right. and then they'll introduce like a much bigger one.
Exactly.
But like depending on which anime it is and which like conflicts they are that get introduced, it can have a bit of either a slow ramp up or pretty quick. It depends, you know. Like I think like since we're making this comparison, that Naruto is just one of those that has like a pretty decent build up just because of how significant the conflicts are.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So I guess going from there. By the way, Stormbreaker, I have chosen which bracket. Well, technically, you guys chose which bracket, and I'm going to announce it. I'll announce it in the second hour of this after we've gotten through like the topic, and that way I'll make sure none of the voting hasn't changed before I make the final verdict. But I will tell you it's going to be fun. I'll go through I'll give you a couple more of the people that will be included in that bracket as well. Which will be fun. By the way, did you follow the last battle bracket, Noah?
I followed a little bit of it, yeah.
I think the next one will be it'll be different, but I think it'll be just as exciting, maybe more exciting for people. What? They just released a trailer of the Xbox X Series XXL, and it's like the X Series, but 10 times bigger.
What?
It's like you
No
place a
way.
fridge next to your TV. I don't know if you're serious or not, but I'm going to check it out.
There's no way.
There's
That's
no
gotta
way.
be fake.
That sounds hilarious. If it is, I'm totally intrigued. But so going back into it, so here's my intrigue with My Hero, and this is one of the reasons it makes me ask this question, because they have confirmed that they want My Hero Academia to stretch as one of the long form animes.
Okay.
They've already said that this is going to be a long haul anime. You're going to be watching it for a long time, right?
Right. Yeah.
And when I look at Naruto, right, the highest stakes in Naruto itself was losing Sasuke, and then it was like, what was it at? Maybe the Leaf Village, protecting the Leaf Village. But was that even a thing in Naruto, like the actual original? Yeah, it was. But even there, when you were saving the Leaf Village, it wasn't even him that did the saving. Like, he didn't do the fighting. Naruto didn't. So Naruto himself wasn't responsible for any large stake conflicts for a while, right? I mean, for the most part, would you agree?
I'd say that's valid. Yeah, as far as like immediate significance to like the individual characters. Like, I think you could argue that the fight with like Zabuza, like one of like the very earliest arcs, I feel like you could make the argument that that's like pretty significant.
It was significant,
like that was
but I
pretty high
wouldn't say
stakes.
it was like the death of like their companions, but I feel like in any anime, like there's kind of always the stakes.
Wait, okay, I'm gonna watch this trailer. Keep talking.
No,
sorry.
continue. I'm gonna pop it on too. Actually, let me look. So this is the Xbox XXL series world premiere trailer. It is from IGN, so it's legit.
Oh god. The first comment is WTF, April Fool's Day was like a month ago.
By the way, I would like to clarify if this is a gaming conversation, which I want to have a gaming conversation down the road.
Yes, please. Yes.
I want to talk about the new the new consoles, so I won't spend too much time on it today. But
yeah, dude,
but I can tell you exactly why they're doing this. I can tell you exactly why they're doing this.
Oh, it is a
plain as
joke.
day. Is it?
It is a joke. Yeah. You'll see in a second. That's really funny, actually.
Oh. Industrial. What? Massively integrated power supply.
That's really funny. I think, what did it say?
Funny.
It says 0 to 60 FPS in 2 seconds or something. Just a shitload of ports. That's funny. I like that.
That's funny. That is funny. You trolled us. You trolled us. All right, that's good.
He got us.
Imagine if that was real. I would tell you why. I was going to tell you why I would think it would be real, and it's because Xbox is no longer competing with PlayStation. They're competing with PC gamers.
Ooh, that's an interesting take.
And so they're trying. I think the reason the Xbox Series is so big as already is because it's trying to be match computing power.
Yeah, that's fair. I can see that. Dude, we've got to do a next gen discussion.
We absolutely will.
I have so much to say about the console world.
Yeah,
right now,
and then maybe we can even do some theorizing about what the next Nintendo console would look like.
Ooh, man.
This could be a fun little conversation. All right, but back to so what I was trying to say is like, so you look at Naruto, right? And Naruto, it did have some decent sized stakes, but like what I noticed though is like Naruto has much slower ramp up. It's not any less intriguing, but it had a lot slower ramp up to where there was world level stakes. Way further. Like you didn't get to like world level or like even nation level stakes until like far into the show. right?
Yeah,
And so
maybe even into like
into
Shippuden.
Shippuden, yeah.
You might argue.
And so it's like when you look back, like that's one of the reasons they were able to sustain for 700 episodes, right?
Yeah.
Is because the stakes were able to continually be upped, right? And that's one of the, like, if you look at the MCU, that's one of the reasons people are worried about the MCU is because they are no longer, or they've gone such a high stakes. How can they continue to up the stakes, right?
Yeah.
So I'm both intrigued, excited, and concerned for My Hero Academia because I feel like the stakes are already pretty high. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Like
that's a
when
good
I
point.
see somebody when I see even in the very last episode that we just watched, right? Literally,
Yeah.
Endeavor is the #1 hero, and he had to put every single fiber of his being into beating into that Nomu,
Yeah.
which makes you wonder if he's gonna lose, then what can beat? Like that thing can't be beat, right? So it's like. It continued like how are they going to up the stakes? Like how are they going to continue because they keep throwing things that are a match for the #1 hero. So what's going to be a match for like our protagonist? But it's also exciting because the fact that they're doing that now also does kind of make me think that they have things in store for what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And like ways in which like our protagonists are going to surpass because it's like you have to think like if you look back in Naruto, right, as a reference, and you watch Naruto, and you see probably like the fight with the third Hokage, right, in Naruto, right? Eventually, you'd argue that Naruto surpassed him in power, right?
Right.
Like, because he surpassed everyone in power.
Yeah.
So if we got that early on, but we got those big heroes because because those mentor figures set the bar for what strength can be so that our protagonist can pass the bar.
Yeah.
And so, and typically it's not just your protagonist because you're following that character and a few other characters that are like the future generation, right? And especially in My Hero, where that's like very clearly stated, like, hey, this is the next generation of heroes that are going to have to, rise above and fill the void. So like I see that, and it's kind of exciting. I hope I did this right. How I did. It's exciting because you're like, oh, they literally like they're showing us how much better our protagonists are going to end up being when we watch that. So like I watch like the Endeavor fight, I watch the All Might fight, and I'm like, these are awesome. And they also show us that our characters that we're following are going to become somehow crazier than that.
Yeah.
And so I'm intrigued because it's like I don't really know what we're going to expect. Also, like this is just Japan, so like do we think that they'll eventually branch out from outside of Japan? Are there threats larger than the ones that we're seeing, but just in different countries?
Yeah, I've thought that too, actually.
So it's like I'm really curious how they're going to continually up the stakes, and like it is at some points you're like it's kind of concerning, but at the other side you're like I also feel like the fact that they're doing this is like pretty exciting because I do think that they have more to come. I don't know what are your thoughts? Like, do you think where do you think they could go with the future of? I'm also excited to be talking to you because anyone I talk to that's read the manga from it, like I can't have these conversations because they're just like, oh well, in the manga this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like, I want to speculate.
I mean, well, first off, what I wanted to touch on from earlier that you mentioned was like if they are if they're throwing enemies at like that even Endeavor are having a hard time with, then like what's it going to look like in the future? I mean, the thing I think about that is that I think they number one, it seems like that Nomu that he fought was like an outlier when it came to like the quality of like an elite type of type of Nomu. So like I'm thinking that most of them probably are not like that. So that'll be like a rare breed kind of thing.
Right.
The other thing, so maybe that, so those probably won't be showing up as often. The other thing that I think is that they probably threw in that fight to, like build up hype and like set the stakes, so that like the audience understands like this is how serious it's getting, and like this is the kind of power that the League of Villains has right now. Like,
right.
I don't think it's like so much about like those enemies and that power in particular. I think it's just like specifically setting up stakes.
Yeah, I think just as quickly, I'll let you go back. I just wanted to. I think when you're talking about that, I think you're right. I also think that in reference to that, I think another reason that they did it was also so that they could give Endeavor kind of temporary deterrent status, kind of like All Might, but not as long. Because if you look at the fight, it was like he won this time, but there's a good chance he won't win next time. And it kind of was like, okay, so he's temporarily the deterrent, but we're going to need really quick for someone else to come in and fill that void. That's kind of the vibes I got. I don't know if you got those vibes.
Well, I think, okay, so I agree with you with the part about the deterrent. I think maybe we're going to see like a shift back to like the point of view of the League of Villains and see how they feel about like Endeavor's presence as the new number one, and maybe see like a shift in their strategy. Right. But I think the point more so of like putting Endeavor in like in the middle of that was like not only to set up some character development for him, but just to kind of put him in the forefront and saying like, so like this is the new number one, like this is the who we have at the top of the charts right now. This is like the new leader pretty much. And like I think we saw a lot of that in the middle of the fight too, with the pedestrians on the news and stuff saying like he's number one, he's like he is like the strongest right now, and like he can do this, he can win this fight, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I think it was just like to give him a lot of screen time and like to give his character a lot of significance in the story right now, because obviously going forward, if the stakes keep getting bigger and bigger, then he's going to play a bigger role. So I think the show wants us to start recognizing Endeavor as like this is get used to seeing this guy, because he's gonna be a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And the only other point that I wanted to make was with the question like, oh, if this is the kind of strength that Endeavor is going up against and he's already like super close to losing, then where does that let us go from here? And my response to that would be, it was like you were saying earlier that, obviously the protagonist is going to outdo the generation before him, is going to do all of the number one heroes now. So clearly we can see, it's obvious to us that Deku is eventually going to be the strongest.
Right.
So just like in the last arc where it, just came down to that one, Midoriya versus that one, big bad, like super strong villain, and he ended up winning. I think we're going to see more moments like that in the future where, Midoriya is going to just get stronger and stronger, and he's going to, take more of a front and center presence in the plot, and so we'll get to see a lot more of him just beating the crap out of the League of Villains.
Homeless people. Oh, I mean, yeah, villains.
What?
I didn't say beat the crap out of homeless people. Nothing. I put words. I'm done with it. I'm over it. Okay. Stormbreaker. You were saying beat the crap out of it. I randomly put in homeless people, but
What the hell, dude?
I don't know. But real quick, Stormbreaker said, I want another American-produced show like Avatar: Last Airbender to take off. I agree. I mean, they still are making Korra stuff. Actually, I think they are redoing some Korra stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that show still going, really?
I don't think it's going. I think they're redoing. They're like making another spin-off or like another. They're making something Avatar, but I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Yeah, I never watched.
Shit.
I actually never watched it, but I heard good things from other people. But yeah, I do think you're right. In fact, like I did also think it was good for like it was also kind of a redeeming arc for him, because I know for a long time we've been basically told like, hey, this is a bad guy. Like Endeavor's like he's a good guy, but he's also kind of a bad guy, like.
Yeah.
Like, because obviously, like, which is crazy to me, but they did go like all in on like, yeah, he's an abusive person, like he's abusive, like talking about how like he used to beat his wife and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, like, I do want to talk about that part of the last arc too, because that was a really interesting part that they included. But keep going, yeah.
And like, well, it was interesting to me because it's like. Basically, when they dove into his arc, or they dove into kind of in that episode, they were like, hey, he's got this really bad past, which we haven't seen in a long time. But basically, we learn in that episode, he separated himself from her, aware of his issue. And it sounds like his mother basically said, yeah, he's been giving me, like, trying to make up for it ever since. And and it basically said like he lives with that guilt. He's been working towards making up for that, and basically saying that like he feels the weight of like the fact that he wants to be able to help more people, but is like will never have the strength, and he knows that he'll never have the strength that All Might has to be able to do that. And it was very interesting to see how they chose to go about it, like. Explaining it without getting him off the hook for it, I felt like they did that, which was interesting. It was very like a neat way of addressing it. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Like they haven't gone out of their way to, or rather, they have gone out of their way to make sure the audience understands that. He has not been redeemed, and he also has not been forgiven, but he at the very least acknowledges his past, and he's going to continue to work on it.
Right, yeah.
And I thought that was really cool, and I thought, honestly, that made that fight that much more impactful.
Yeah.
Especially with the kind of not flashbacks, but like the cutaways to his family, so that we could see them saying like, hey, like this is what's happened, like, are you sure you want to like keep supporting this guy, or like you realize what he did, right? Like things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I don't know, like it made it like so much more significant, because like you realize that there's like it's always so refreshing to see flawed characters.
Right.
Like I was thinking about this the other day when you were during your marathon stream, and you were talking about
a flawed character.
Yeah, you're the villain of our arc.
Yes.
No, no. When you were talking about like how you would like redo the DC cinematic universe,
Right.
and um, we were talking about the concept of a Raven movie.
Right.
I started thinking back to the Teen Titans show on Cartoon Network,
Right.
which is an absolute bop, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic show.
What are your
And
thoughts
I started,
on Teen Titans Stormbreaker? Continue. Sorry.
yeah, tell us, please. And yeah, like it's the same, like because I started thinking about the character development of the Teen Titans in that show, and I was like, man, like every character had flaws, and like the show paid attention to all of those flaws, and it was so refreshing to be able to like, you know, over the course of the entire show, like understand that and be like, oh, you know, there would be an episode where, you know, Beast Boy is struggling with something, and then there'd be an episode where Robin's struggling with something, and it's like, you know, there wasn't any one character that was like, hey, I'm, you know, the one dimension easygoing character that's just here for, you know, as a distraction or something like that. Like every character was relevant. And
that's a really good point.
And so like it's really refreshing to see writing like that. And the same thing in Endeavor's case too, because like not only that during that fight, not only was it the struggle to you know, save the city, but it was also the struggle to redeem himself and prove to himself and the people that he wronged that, you know, I'm better than that, and I'm going to continue to get better than. So,
and you know
that
what?
Was really...
And this was not at all the biggest takeaway by any means, because what you said was, but one of the neat little takeaways that you take away from it, and this goes back to what I was saying, how these big figures in the early parts of these long animes are to set up the bar to be beaten, right? And to me, one of the takeaways from that was you watch it and you're like, if you pay attention the entire time, the reason he couldn't do everything he was doing, like he could have theoretically done more to beat him, theoretically. But he couldn't because of his overheating issue. Right?
Right.
And so one of the big takeaways that, like, going back to like these mentors set the bar, is that we watch Endeavor not be able to go full strength because he can't regulate his own body temperature. And that was one of the reasons that he actually selected his wife. Right? He selected his wife. If they go back to the beginning, the origin behind his kids was he had a kid intentionally with a girl with ice abilities so that his kids would be able to regulate temperature unlike he was. And I think that the legitimate reason that he did that was because he knew, I can never be as strong as All Might, but maybe my kid can be. He's like, I can't be the best hero, but if I do this, I can have a kid that will be. And that's why like he trained his kid so heavily as a kid, because he's like, maybe if I can't be the number one, I can raise the number one and in a way be the, you know, do that for the world. And so like,
yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. I can totally see that.
It's really like interesting looking back on that. And to me, that also says like, by seeing what Endeavor can do with his overheating problem, that tells me like, oh, Todoroki's going to be like ridiculous towards the end of this series. You know, like we're going to see something big. And it goes back to the fact that I think Todoroki's going to be the big villain.
I don't think so.
I think there's a potential. You don't think so?
There's totally a potential, but like, if that was the case, I would be disappointed because he doesn't have any antagonistic qualities. he you know you might I maybe could have seen that like around about like season 2, because at that point he was like this like mysterious like broody kind of dude, but and like after that fight with Midoriya, you could make the argument that he was like a bit antagonistic, but like up until this point he's he hasn't done anything that could that could be considered antagonistic, at least from my point of view. So for them to try to pull that out in the future would be I feel like would be like completely off brand. It wouldn't, they wouldn't have set it up that well, because I mean, let's go back to Naruto as a comparison. Sasuke ended up being, like defecting, and from like day one, from like episode 1, so when Sasuke was introduced, he was like brooding, mysterious, and pissed off, and he immediately hated the protagonist. So it would make sense then for him to kind of spend a majority of the show learning to kind of get along with the protagonist, but then eventually, of course, he fell off and ended up becoming the antagonist of the rest of the series. But like with Todoroki, we really haven't seen any signs of that. I mean, granted, we haven't really seen much significant characterization for Todoroki in a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
If you think about it, like he hasn't been center stage for very long, and now that Endeavor is number 1, if we can assume that Endeavor is going to have the spotlight for a while, then
it could be his arc now.
Yeah, then we could see a lot more from Todoroki going forward, which would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for the time being, with the lack of characterization that Todoroki's had, and with the lack of antagonistic tendencies that he's had, I don't see that happening in the future.
Yeah. By the way, 2 things. One, Stormbreaker says Teen Titans is cool. After X-Men 90s, it's best superhero cartoon ever. Maybe I should go back and watch the X-Men cartoons, because I actually haven't seen those. But they are on Disney Plus, so I'll go watch it. I've been meaning to put some new shows on my roster. I've been watching the same stuff. Cartoons, I'll have to give it to DC. Marvel shows are just garbage. I 100% agree with you. Watch Young Justice, too. I haven't watched it. Young Justice is baller, too. By the way, you made me think when you mentioned about Sasuke defecting. The best thing that My Hero did, another way that they told me this is going to be a great show, is the moment when the League of Villains grabs Bakugo, which everyone is like, this is Sasuke. This is just Sasuke too. And they take him, and then instead of defecting, he's like, nah, dude, that's not me.
Yeah.
And they waited until after that to explain to you. And granted, even then they didn't like go heavy into it, but they gave you enough, basically telling you like, even All Might recognized it. It's like, okay, this kid, right, wants to be the strongest hero of all time, even more than your main character.
Yeah.
They're like, this kid is this is the Endeavor. This is Endeavor, right? This is the kid that knows he won't ever be the number 1 hero, but never wants to stop trying. Like, that's that kid, Yeah. And so like, and the fun thing is like they go time and time again. They're like, this kid is smart. This kid is powerful. This kid is like, but he's also like morally strong too. Like, he's not going to budge on his morals. His morals just might be a little bit different. Maybe he's a little hot-headed, but like, he's not, he's still a good guy at the end of the day. So it's really cool to see him. I actually think that I could see him either becoming Endeavor's sidekick, or what I'd see actually even more likely is him being Hawk's sidekick.
Oh my god, both of those things would be so dope,
wouldn't it? Yeah, because you gotta admit, once they introduced Hawk in this episode, I was like instant favorite. I'm like, this dude's awesome. I'm like,
dude, he's so cool.
I was like, this is the dude.
So you told me that the like the last episode was the only one that I really need to worry about. But when I hopped into that last episode, I realized that there's a big portion, there's a large portion of the second to last episode that is pretty important.
Was that the one with the rankings?
Yeah.
I thought they were both the same episode. That's why I was confused.
No. In that second to last episode was where they showed the
rankings.
Yeah, the chart, the Japanese hero charts or whatever it was. So I went back and I watched that one too, and yeah, he's such a cool character. He doesn't give a shit. He just wants to I think what he said was that like he wants to do all the hard work so that heroes have like way too much time on their hands. Like
right.
Like yeah,
and it was
he just
cool
wants
how he's like, yeah, he's only been on the charts for like 1 year or something, and he just like jumped up. And I don't think he's actually like been in any of the hero schools either. So it's like
yeah, no, he never went to UA or anything like that, and he's like 22 years old.
Right.
And he's like the number 2 hero, and he's just chilling. Like he's such a piece of shit, but he's he's walking down the street and like saving puppies from getting hit by cars and like
exactly. I all loved that how they were having a conversation and he's like saving people and like doing things. It's also like that was a really good episode too. Like it just set up everything. And the other thing is, I want to see what Best Genius does. I want to see him fight because honestly, how does he top 10?
Oh yeah. That's such a bummer for me is that they're always like Best Genius is like one of the greatest superheroes ever, and it's like, what does he do?
He just wears jean overalls, like he just wears jeans that go up to his shoulders. I don't understand what his powers are.
He's just Denim Man. That's all he is.
That's the best. They're just calling it a cooler way of saying Denim Man.
Yeah, and the fact, dude, they could not have picked a better generation to introduce Best Genist, considering millennials like very weird fascination with including denim in like every meme.
Yeah, dude. So it's just very like. This is such a cool show, and it's just getting and like the fact that it's just getting started. Like we already know what's gonna happen, right? There's gonna be like if I can use Naruto again as a template, basically what we're saying here is we're gonna have My Hero Academia, and it's gonna get them through school, and then they're gonna have more. Like they're going to graduate, and then I think there's gonna be more after the show. Like after the school.
You think they're gonna become like full-time heroes, and then it'll keep going.
And I think that's when it's gonna pick up. Like,
yeah, I could definitely see that.
Like I could see a Naruto and then Shippuden examples, right? Like if you use that as kind of template, I could see them absolutely doing that. And then like, but I think like I could even see it like branching out outside of their like country and like going into even like larger scale conflicts elsewhere. Dude, that 1-10-10 monster is just Venusaur, yeah, and the dragon is just Gyarados. Yeah, they're basically just like their own little things. It's pretty cool though. I do enjoy it. Yes, it's just like I can see it going so many places. We really just
for sure.
I do think that they have to set up a villain in the school, right? Or else what's the point? In a sense, like there has to be a villain coming out of the school.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I could definitely agree with that. I just don't know who it would be though. That's the thing.
Yeah, there's already pretty much confirmed that one of the students is actually already in cahoots with the League of Villains. That's actually already confirmed, pretty much.
Ooh, from the writing staff, you mean?
Something like that, yeah. Like class has basically, I don't remember who it came from, but basically it's been all but confirmed that one of the school members of Class A is a traitor, but they don't know who. They already do know. They've already established in the actual anime that there's a leak in the school, but the showrunners have basically, or I forget who it was, but someone confirmed that one of the school members, or like one of the class members, is a traitor. And a lot of people think it's the dude with the eyes and ears because they say he's a Nomu.
Oh, that'd be interesting. So yeah, when you say class A, you mean like from the immediate, like from Midoriya's class.
Yes,
basically.
yeah, that's class A. Yeah, I think it's class A.
Wow, interesting.
So like, which is just like, it's just cool, kind of like to think about. But I'm like, but I think it's gonna go past that. Like, I think there's gonna be more than one villain. But the problem is, all of the characters are really likable. And so I don't know who could like defect. I would think it would have to be one of the main three, and that's why I keep thinking that. The only person I could see else becoming a villain that could be like a pretty good threat is the girl that can like manufacture things.
Yeah,
she could probably like defect and become a pretty strong villain. Another one is the guy with the raven thing. I forget what his name is. The guy that like conjures the big bird thing.
Yeah.
Like he'd be a
I know who you're
big
talking
threat
about.
if he became a villain. So I could see something like that. There's a lot though. Like it's just very it's a well-made show. But let's kind of go back into it. We might not even be able to get to the second like the whole era as a whole, but like where do you think it's going to go, like if it does go as far as like I'm thinking it might? Like what do you think like they could do with the show?
Honestly, that's like a really good question, and I don't know is the thing.
Right?
Yeah, like it seems like they're pretty, like at the time it seems like it's somewhat limited what they can do.
Right.
But I guess it all depends on what the interactions between characters will be. It depends on, because the thing is, we still don't know. Like the League of Villains is such a wild card right now. Like we don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
And everything that happens in the future is kind of like hinging on what
they do.
Yeah, what they might do, because like for a while we've just seen them doing some like really just out of pocket stuff. Like
right.
They just do some crazy stuff out of nowhere, and it's always out of left field. So right. So yeah, I mean, whatever they decide to do is where the show goes. But like, I think it would continue to follow the League of Villains. If not, then probably the like if they do like a 2-part series type thing, like with Naruto and Shippuden, then the first part will probably be League of Villains, and then it'll wrap up with them, and then that second part might be someone else, a different group, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that second part could be like the villain of that second part could be whoever's defected from Class A or whatever.
So I actually have a theory. I'll say this theory. I'll let you know. You can let me know your thoughts, and then I'm gonna get the Stormbreakers question, which is what our favorite is, and then I think we can do like maybe one or more topics. But real quick, one of the big things that I think Naruto helped with is you could already see that Naruto had a lot to go for because it did a lot of world building in the very beginning with all the other nations and everything like that. That's something that My Hero really hasn't done, even though like Naruto. That's why it's kind of hard for us to see where it could go. They can still do that in school. But here's what I think is going to happen, right? So All For One, we know, is still around, right? He's still moving, like he's got these big plans, right? But his prodigy is the guy with the hands on his face, right? I forget his name. But still, he's around. And he's still, if he was let out, they keep talking about him, right? They still bring him up, how he's locked up. We can't let him do literally anything because if we do, we don't know what powers he has, right? So there's still more than likely One for All will come out and be a problem again. So my theory is we're gonna watch Deku evolve. Deku's eventually gonna have his at odds with the dude with the hands on his face, and that's gonna be his first person he has to beat. The second person he's gonna have to beat is One for All. Okay, that is the final villain. That is the that is the final person. That's the climax, right? The final. He's senior year of high school of the school. That's the person he's gonna have to beat, right?
Ooh.
So is One for All, right? So which basically means he has to be as strong as All Might by his senior year of high school. Right?
Yeah, I could see that.
Which is crazy, but here's what I think is going to happen. I think he'll beat One for All. But here's the thing, by that time, and this is one of the only ways I could see it continuing past that, is by that time he will have realized that I think this is who I'm supposed to find. Anyway, he's going to basically after defeating him, Bakugo this whole time, he's trying to work as hard as he can to be as strong as All Might was, right? He wants to be able to be on par with what All Might's strength was as well. What we're going to find is at the end of that, Bakugo is going to help him maybe fight All for One, or maybe he's going to watch him beat One for All and be like, I can never ever reach the feats that Midoriya has reached, right?
Yeah.
I think he's secretly gonna find a way to take One for All.
Oh man.
And then
that'd be nutty.
And then the problem is he's gonna take it with the sense that I'm gonna be a hero, but I think what he's gonna find is that the power itself inherently involves you stealing the powers from other people.
Yeah.
And so he's going to keep sacrificing, right? Like, under the guise of I'm trying to be strong as a hero, but he's taking other people's powers.
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever watched Heroes? Did you ever watch the show Heroes?
No.
It was something that guy had to do. He had to kill people to take their powers.
Oh, jeez.
And I think that Bakugo is going to end up becoming the large villain, but not off of just because he wants to be as strong as the hero, but because he's doing that, he's kind of sacrificing it, if that makes sense. So I think that he's going to steal All for One just so he can be as powerful as All Might was. Kind of like I've tried everything, but no matter how hard I work, this kid who is given his powers is going to always be better than me,
Yeah, I can see that.
That to me is the only way they could go past One for All, because One for All is inherently the pinnacle of his story, because it's just it is the yin and yang kind of scenario. So I don't know what else they could do. Stormbreaker actually said, "What's your favorite Dragon Ball My